Before we start, I need you to understand something. What you're about to hear isn't just another true crime story. It's a warning, because Phoenix Spencer Horn was only 21 years old, full of life, and trusted the person who ended up taking everything from her. And the most chilling part? The danger didn't come all at once. It crept in quietly, the way it does in so many relationships, until it's too late to escape. Stay with me until the end, because by the time you hear what happened and what he did after, you'll see the red flags that could save someone else's life. This is the story of how love became lethal. Welcome back to Unsolved Crime Case. In this episode, we're diving into one of the most heartbreaking and disturbing cases we've ever covered, the story of Phoenix Spencer Horn. She was just 21 years old, full of dreams, light, and kindness, until her life was stolen in a brutal act of domestic violence that shocked Scotland. We tell this story with deep respect for Phoenix and her loved ones, not for shock, but to shed light on the hidden dangers that can lurk behind closed doors. So settle in and stay with me until the end, because this is a story you will never forget. Phoenix Spencer Horn was born in Scotland in 2002, and from the moment she entered the world, there was something radiant about her. Her name itself felt prophetic, Phoenix, a name that meant to rise from the ashes, to burn brightly, to endure. Friends later said it suited her perfectly. To those who knew her, Phoenix was not just alive. She was vivid, the kind of person who filled up space with her laughter, who remembered the small things about people, who reached out when someone seemed off, even if they didn't say a word. There are people who move through the world quietly, almost unseen. Phoenix was the opposite. She had presence. Growing up, Phoenix had an inquisitive mind and a warm, protective streak. Teachers described her as sharp and deeply empathetic, the kind of student who not only excelled academically but also lifted others up. If a classmate was struggling, Phoenix was the one who would sit with them at lunch, walk with them between classes, or quietly slip them notes of encouragement. Her friends said she had this uncanny ability to make people feel like they mattered. It didn't matter if you were popular or quiet, confident or unsure. Phoenix saw you. And for people going through dark times, that kind of presence was magnetic. She was creative too. Phoenix loved art, writing, and music, often using these as outlets to express the emotions she carried for others. In her teens, she began speaking openly about mental health, posting messages online encouraging her peers to seek help, to talk, to not carry pain alone. Even then, she was the person who wanted to fix broken things, not because she had to, but because she couldn't stand seeing others hurt. By her early 20s, Phoenix had blossomed into a confident young woman with striking looks and a firecracker personality. She was fiercely independent, known for her quick wit and ability to laugh through adversity. But beneath that spark was a softness, a deep yearning for connection, stability, and love. Her friends described her as the big sister of their group, the one who drove people home safely, who stayed on the phone until 3 a.m. if someone was crying, who somehow had boundless energy for everyone else's struggles even when she was quietly battling her own. That nurturing nature made her magnetic. People gravitated to her warmth, and she found purpose in helping others feel less alone. One of those people was Grace McCabe, who would later become a finalist in the Miss Scotland 2024 competition. Grace often credited Phoenix with helping her through her hardest moments, saying Phoenix consistently reached out, was my friend and supported me through the hardest time. I wish she got all of the happiness and success I knew was out there for her. But there was a tragic irony woven through Phoenix's compassion. While she was busy saving everyone else, she didn't always see the danger growing closest to her. When Phoenix met the man who would later take her life, she believed she had found someone who truly saw her in return. At first, their relationship seemed exciting, even romantic. He was attentive, charming in that intense way that can feel flattering when you're young and hopeful. They bonded quickly. He told her she was different, special, that no one had ever understood him the way she did. For a young woman like Phoenix, empathetic, giving, and eager to be loved deeply, those words were intoxicating. Her friends remember how happy she seemed in those first weeks. She spoke about him with a glowing smile, brushed off little oddities as quirks, and defended him fiercely when anyone raised an eyebrow. And that, sadly, is how so many stories like this begin. Not with violence, not with screaming or bruises, but with affection, promises, and the illusion of safety. It didn't happen overnight. The darkness crept in slowly, almost imperceptibly at first. There were small things. Jealous comments when she went out with friends, constant texting when she wasn't with him, pouting if she didn't reply quickly enough. He'd frame it as worry, as caring too much. But worry turned to suspicion. Caring turned to control. Phoenix, being compassionate, tried to soothe him. She reassured him, changed her behavior to make him feel secure. She thought love meant patience, meant understanding. She didn't see these as warning signs. Soon, there were apologies mixed into the affection. Outbursts followed by flowers. Tears followed by declarations that he couldn't live without her. To outsiders, this might seem obviously toxic. But when you're inside it, it just feels like someone loving you too much. Her friends began noticing subtle shifts. Phoenix stopped coming to certain social events. She seemed tired, drained. She smiled, but it didn't always reach her eyes. When people gently asked if she was okay, she brushed it off, insisting she was just busy, just tired. That's the thing about abuse. It hides in plain sight. It thrives in secrecy, in isolation, in the silent erosion of someone's spark. And Phoenix's spark was beginning to dim. Over time, their relationship grew more turbulent. They broke up and got back together in cycles, each reconciliation marked by promises that things would change. He told her he was struggling, that he just needed her support, that he was sorry. And Phoenix, being who she was, believed him. She wanted to help. She wanted to heal him. But love built on fear is not love. It's captivity disguised as care. And the more Phoenix tried to fix him, the more she lost herself. By late 2023, those closest to her were worried. They saw flashes of the old Phoenix, laughing, loud, full of light, but they also saw the toll it was taking on her. She had become quieter, more withdrawn, like someone carrying something heavy but refusing to set it down. And while no one could have predicted what was coming, the warning signs were there. The controlling behavior, the emotional volatility, the way he seemed to orbit her constantly, like he wanted to consume her entirely. In the days leading up to November 16, 2023, nothing outwardly dramatic seemed to happen. To her friends, Phoenix appeared to be managing, balancing her relationship with the rest of her life. But behind closed doors, tensions were building. We may never know the exact conversations, the exact triggers, the exact breaking point, but the pattern was clear. A cycle of control, emotional highs and lows, possessiveness, and then, finally, violence. Phoenix had no idea that she was standing on the edge of a cliff, and that the person holding her hand was about to push her over it. Looking back, her friends would torture themselves with what-ifs. What if they'd pressed her harder about how she was doing? What if they'd recognized the signs for what they were? What if they'd convinced her to leave before it was too late? But that's the cruel reality of domestic violence. It isolates its victims and silences their cries until those cries are gone altogether. Phoenix was trying to protect him, even as he was becoming the danger she needed protection from. Phoenix Spencer Horn was 21 years old. She had her whole life ahead of her. Dreams, friendships, love, and the kind of potential that makes the people around you believe in brighter days. She should have had decades to live, to grow, to become everything she wanted to be. Instead, she would soon be gone, and the man she trusted most would be the one to take her life. This is where our story turns. From the light of who Phoenix was, into the darkness of what was done to her. The end didn't come suddenly. It crept toward Phoenix quietly, disguised as just another argument. Another night in a relationship she had grown used to navigating like a minefield. By November 2023, the relationship had grown volatile. The warm charm that had drawn her in had faded, replaced with mood swings, jealousy, and possessiveness. Friends sensed something was off but didn't know how deep the danger ran. And neither did Phoenix. The day before the murder, Phoenix appeared on the surface to be okay. She texted friends, laughed at memes, and went about her day as usual. But behind closed doors, tension was building. Her boyfriend had reportedly become increasingly controlling in recent weeks. He wanted to know where she was, who she was talking to, what she was doing at all times. Arguments had started over trivial things. Missed calls, delayed replies, glances at her phone. Phoenix had tried to calm him, tried to reason with him, but it was like speaking into a storm. Every attempt to soothe him only seemed to fuel his paranoia. That night, they were together in private. No one knows exactly what was said, but neighbors would later tell police they heard raised voices. Muffled, angry, then abruptly silent. The next day, November 16th, would be the last day of Phoenix Spencerhorn's life. She spent the morning quietly, replying to messages sporadically, seeming distracted. Friends later said she sounded off. Like her usual spark was dimmed. She reassured everyone she was fine, just tired. As evening fell, she was alone with her boyfriend again. This time, the tension snapped. What followed was a scene of unimaginable violence. In that room, the person she had loved and defended turned on her with lethal force. The details of her final moments are harrowing, and out of respect for Phoenix, we will not describe them graphically. What matters is this. Phoenix's life was stolen from her by the very person she had trusted to protect it. And then, nothing. No frantic 999 call. No attempt to save her. Just silence. Instead of reaching for help, her killer set about trying to erase what he had done. Over the next 2 days, he lived in the same space as Phoenix's lifeless body, moving around her like nothing had happened. He closed the curtains. He cleaned. He sent texts to others as though Phoenix were still alive. He even went outside at one point, blending into the world as if nothing was wrong. This wasn't the behavior of someone in shock. Investigators would later say. This was calculation, self-preservation, a cold effort to buy time to figure out what to do next. Meanwhile, Phoenix's friends were growing uneasy. She had gone quiet. No replies, no posts, nothing. For someone as active and talkative as Phoenix, this was out of character. Friends sent her messages, called her phone. Some even considered going to her home. But silence answered back. At this point, none of them knew she was already gone. They assumed she was overwhelmed, maybe taking space from her boyfriend, maybe just tired. They had no idea that 2 days earlier, the person she trusted most had ended her life, and was now living in the aftermath of it, pretending she still existed. On November 17th, the day after the murder, her killer kept up the act. He deleted messages, tried to scrub traces of their recent arguments. To the outside world, he appeared calm, disturbingly calm. This wasn't someone spiraling from guilt or panic. This was someone trying to get away with murder. Some later speculated he was testing the waters, waiting to see if anyone would notice Phoenix's absence before deciding what to do. That chilling limbo stretched on into the next day. Finally, on November 18th, 2 full days after killing Phoenix, he picked up the phone and dialed 999. When the operator answered, his tone was eerily composed. "I had a psychotic break," he said flatly, "and I killed my wife." Phoenix wasn't his wife. She was his girlfriend. But the slip of the word didn't disguise the horror of what he was admitting. The operator, stunned, pressed for details. He repeated himself, calm, emotionless. Police were immediately dispatched. As officers raced to the address, they didn't know what they were walking into. A murder scene frozen in time, a young woman's life extinguished days earlier, and a killer waiting calmly to be found. When police arrived, they found Phoenix's body. She had been dead for 2 days. The room was silent, heavy, as though the air itself was holding its breath. Her killer showed no signs of urgency, no panic. He didn't try to run, didn't resist arrest. He simply surrendered. That chilling calm struck investigators immediately. It was as if, to him, the hardest part wasn't what he had done. It was admitting it out loud. News of her death began to ripple through her friend group, then the wider community. First, disbelief. People thought it had to be a mistake. Phoenix was vibrant, alive, indestructible in their minds. Then the truth settled like ash. Phoenix was gone. The outpouring of grief was immediate and raw. Social media filled with tributes, photos, and memories. Friends posted about her kindness, her laugh, her way of making people feel seen. One friend wrote, "She had so much life left. I can't believe she's gone." Grace McCabe, heartbroken, posted that she wished Phoenix got all of the happiness and success I knew was out there for her. But grief was laced with something darker. Anger. People wanted to know how this could happen. How someone could love her one day and destroy her the next. How he could walk around for 2 days afterward as if nothing had happened. How could someone do that, and why? In custody, the man who killed Phoenix told police he had snapped. He spoke of a psychotic break, insisting he hadn't planned it, that he had simply lost control. But detectives were skeptical. His behavior after the murder didn't match that of someone who'd lost control. It matched that of someone who knew exactly what he had done and was trying to cover it up. They began combing through his phone, his messages, his browser history, looking for clues. What they found painted a chilling picture of control, jealousy, and possessiveness that had been simmering long before the murder. It became clear this wasn't an unpredictable explosion. It was the end point of a pattern Phoenix may have sensed but never fully saw. As the investigation deepened, Phoenix's family and friends were left in shock. One moment she was here, laughing, loving, living, and the next she was gone. She had only been 21 years old. She had plans, dreams, and decades ahead of her. And now there was just silence. In those early days after the discovery, her loved ones described feeling like they were underwater. Everything muffled, surreal, impossible to process. How could someone who brought so much light be extinguished in such darkness? Phoenix Spencerhorn's murder was not a moment of madness, not a tragic accident. It was the culmination of coercion, control, and possessiveness that ended in lethal violence. And while her killer spent 2 days pretending nothing had happened, the truth was waiting, undeniable and irreversible. Phoenix was gone, and now the world would want answers. The call came in on the morning of November 18, 2023. It was brief. It was flat. It was unforgettable. "I had a psychotic break," the voice said, "and I killed my wife." The call taker froze for just a moment, then launched into protocol, keeping him talking, extracting details, sending officers racing to the scene. The man on the phone sounded eerily calm. There were no sobs, no panic, no urgency, just cold matter-of-factness. He gave the address, confirmed Phoenix's name, said she wasn't breathing, claimed he had just snapped, and that it was like watching himself from the outside. When asked why he hadn't called sooner, his voice didn't waver. "I didn't know what to do," he said. "I just went blank." But the silence of those 2 days spoke louder than any words. Police and paramedics rushed to the scene. Officers later described an unnerving stillness in the house. Curtains drawn, surfaces tidied, a staged calmness that made their skin crawl. They found Phoenix's body. She had been dead for roughly 48 hours. There were no signs of forced entry, no signs of a struggle beyond the violence inflicted upon her. Her killer did not resist arrest. He did not plead. He did not cry. He simply let officers place him in handcuffs and lead him away. One officer quietly remarked that it was like escorting a man who had already rehearsed this moment in his head. At the station, detectives began the first of many interviews. They needed to know what had happened, why it had taken 2 days for him to come forward, and whether anyone else had been involved. He told them, again, that he had snapped, that it had been an argument gone too far, that he had gone into some kind of dissociative state and come out of it to find Phoenix dead. But the story had holes. Why, they asked, had he stayed in the house for 2 days with her body? Why had he not called for help immediately? Why were her belongings disturbed and her phone wiped of recent messages? He shrugged, said he didn't know, said he was in shock. But the digital trail told another story. While he sat in a holding cell, the investigative machine roared to life. Detectives seized phones, laptops, and security camera footage from surrounding streets. They pulled text logs, app messages, and social media activity. Every timestamp mattered. Digital forensics showed that in the days and hours before Phoenix's death, their arguments had escalated. There were messages where he accused her of lying, of seeing other people, of betraying him. Phoenix had responded with reassurance, even apologies, trying desperately to de-escalate. Then, shortly before the estimated time of her death, the messages stopped entirely. From that moment on, her digital life went dark. But his activity didn't. While Phoenix lay dead, he had searched for ways to delete message histories. He had scrolled through social media. He had played music. He had even sent casual messages to others as though nothing had happened. For investigators, this destroyed his psychotic break defense. This wasn't a man lost in shock. This was a man trying to erase what he had done. The post-mortem examination confirmed what detectives already suspected. Phoenix had suffered a violent death. The pathologist noted clear signs of force, indicating rage and intent. There was no evidence of self-defense on his part. No scratches, no bruises, nothing to suggest Phoenix had attacked him first. This undermined his claim that he had acted in a sudden frenzy. Instead, it looked deliberate, one-sided, controlled. Her death was ruled a homicide. As the physical evidence mounted, detectives spoke to Phoenix's friends and family. Their testimonies painted a picture of escalating emotional abuse, jealousy, control, isolation. Several said Phoenix had become withdrawn in recent weeks. One friend described seeing her dim a little, as if the life was being drained out of her. Grace McCabe gave a heartfelt statement about Phoenix's kindness and resilience, saying she had been the kind of person who helped others out of their darkest moments, never imagining she'd fall into one herself. And if you think you've heard the worst of this story, stay with me, because what's coming next will leave you absolutely stunned. The darkest part of this case hasn't even been revealed yet. Friends also reported seeing concerning behavior from her boyfriend, turning up unannounced, checking her phone, and pressuring her to cut contact with certain people. Each detail added weight to the case against him. This had not been spontaneous. It had been the endpoint of a long, slow spiral of control. Meanwhile, defense lawyers began laying the groundwork for a diminished responsibility plea. They claimed he had suffered a psychotic break, a brief period of severe mental disturbance that left him not in control of his actions. But prosecutors were skeptical. A psychotic break, they argued, does not involve meticulously deleting texts. It does not involve lying low for 2 days. It does not involve calmly phoning police once you think you've covered your tracks. And crucially, it does not involve a years-long pattern of controlling behavior. Psychiatrists assessed him, looking for evidence of severe mental illness. They found none. He showed no signs of schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, or any psychotic disorder. He showed signs of anger, of obsession, of possessiveness, but not of psychosis. By the end of November, police had pieced together a chillingly clear timeline. November 15th, arguments escalate. Neighbors overhear shouting. November 16th, Phoenix is killed in a violent attack inside the home. November 16th to 18th, her killer stays in the home, attempts to clean, deletes phone data, and pretends nothing is wrong. November 18th, morning. He calls 999, calmly confesses, and surrenders. It was a story of control turned to violence, and then to calculated concealment. As news broke, the case gripped Scotland. Headlines called it one of the most chilling domestic murders in recent memory. News broadcasts showed smiling photos of Phoenix alongside grim footage of police cordons. What shocked people most wasn't just the murder, it was the delay. The fact that he had stayed with her body for 2 days. The coldness. The calm. Commentators and domestic violence experts appeared on talk shows, warning that this was the deadly endpoint of coercive control, a pattern too often ignored until it's too late. Phoenix became not just a name, but a symbol of how hidden and deadly domestic violence can be. As detectives compiled their evidence into case files, prosecutors began preparing for trial. They would argue that this was murder, intentional, not accidental, not impulsive. They would use the digital evidence, the autopsy findings, and the psychological assessments to dismantle his psychotic break claim. Meanwhile, the defense prepared to argue for manslaughter by diminished responsibility, hoping to paint him as mentally unstable rather than malicious. The legal battle was set, but for Phoenix's loved ones, it was all just noise. None of it would bring her back. While the legal machinery turned, Phoenix's community was frozen in grief. Her funeral became a sea of flowers and tears. Friends clung to each other, still half expecting her to walk through the door. People spoke of her laughter, her selflessness, her light. Grace McCabe described feeling unmoored without her, saying the world felt duller. Others posted memories online, inside jokes, photos from nights out, screenshots of old messages where Phoenix had comforted them during hard times. She had been their rock, and now she was gone. The investigation stripped away the killer's excuses. There had been no psychotic break, no tragic accident. There had been control, then rage, then silence. Phoenix Spencerhorn's murder wasn't spontaneous. It was the predictable, preventable climax of an abusive relationship that had been building toward this ending all along. And now, the world would watch as the courtroom decided his fate. By the time the case reached court, the name Phoenix Spencerhorn had already become known across Scotland. She was no longer just a private young woman loved by her friends and family. She had become the face of a tragedy that left a nation horrified. The question at the heart of the trial was simple, but devastating. Was this murder, a cold, calculated killing born of control and rage, or manslaughter, the result of a sudden psychotic break? The trial began in early 2024. Reporters filled the benches, their pens poised. Court sketch artists studied every expression. Behind them, rows of Phoenix's family and friends sat quietly, clutching tissues and one another's hands. They were there for her, to make sure her voice, silenced in that house, was heard in this courtroom. And across the room, at the defense table, sat the man who had taken her life. Clean-shaven, calm, eyes down, just as he had been on the day he called 999. Prosecutors charged him with murder, arguing that the killing had been intentional, violent, and followed by a deliberate two-day cover-up. The defense argued for a lesser charge of culpable homicide, manslaughter, claiming diminished responsibility due to an alleged psychotic break. They painted him as a deeply troubled young man who had snapped in a moment of mental collapse and then spiraled into shock. The entire case would hinge on intent. Had he meant to kill Phoenix? Or had he simply lost control? The prosecution wasted no time dismantling the image of a man in shock. They called detectives to the stand, who testified about the digital trail left after Phoenix's death, deleted messages, phone resets, online searches about removing evidence. They showed the jury timestamp data proving he had scrolled through social media, played music, and interacted with others online during the 2 days Phoenix lay dead in the same house. This was not a man lost in a fugue state, the lead prosecutor said. This was a man thinking clearly enough to cover his tracks. Then came the forensic evidence. The pathologist described injuries consistent with rage and intent, not an accident. There were no defensive wounds on him, meaning Phoenix hadn't attacked him first. And finally, they brought out the messages Phoenix had sent in the days before her death. Calm, soothing, trying to reassure him while he accused her of betrayal. A pattern of coercive control emerged: possessiveness, paranoia, emotional volatility. The prosecution laid it out plainly. This was not a sudden break. This was the deadly end of an abusive relationship. The defense countered with their central claim, that he had suffered a psychotic break. They brought in a psychiatrist who testified that he had displayed possible dissociative symptoms and described him as emotionally unstable. They argued that he had been under extreme stress, that his mental state had deteriorated, and that he had acted in a brief, catastrophic moment of psychological collapse. They also emphasized his decision to call 999, framing it as proof of remorse. But the prosecution cut through this. If he had truly been out of his mind, they asked, why had he calmly erased messages? Why had he waited 2 full days? Why had he seemed utterly composed when police arrived? The defense had no convincing answer. One of the most emotional moments of the trial came when Phoenix's family took the stand to give victim impact statements. Her mother spoke through tears, describing Phoenix as the brightest light I've ever known, and now the world is darker without her. Her father, voice trembling, told the court about Phoenix's childhood, her laughter, her fierce independence, her compassion. He looked directly at the man who had killed her and said, "You took everything from us." There wasn't a dry eye in the courtroom. Even the judge paused to let the family collect themselves. Their words reminded everyone that this wasn't just a legal case. It was a life, a daughter, a friend, gone forever. After weeks of testimony, closing arguments were delivered. The prosecution urged the jury not to be swayed by excuses. This was not madness, they said. It was murder. The defense begged for understanding. He is broken, they said. This was not who he is. The jury retired. Hours passed. Then they returned with their verdict. Guilty of murder. The word echoed through the courtroom. Phoenix's family wept quietly, holding one another. Friends cried openly. The man who had killed her stared straight ahead, expressionless. The jury had rejected the psychotic break defense completely. They had seen what the evidence made clear. This was not an impulsive act. It was the final explosion of a long, escalating pattern of coercion and control. At sentencing, the judge spoke with cold clarity. He called the murder a senseless, selfish act of intimate partner violence, noting the 2 days of silence afterward as evidence of calculation, not shock. He told the killer that his actions showed not a moment of madness, but a sustained pattern of possessiveness, domination, and rage that culminated in killing a young woman who trusted you. He was sentenced to life in prison, with a minimum term to serve before eligibility for parole. The judge added, "You took from the world a young woman full of promise and light. She will never grow old. Her family will never recover. And you will live with that forever." The verdict sparked widespread reaction across Scotland. There was relief that Phoenix's killer had been held fully accountable. But there was also anger that it had taken her death for people to recognize the signs. Domestic violence charities spoke out, warning that Phoenix's story followed a devastatingly familiar pattern. They called for more education about coercive control, more support systems for young women, and more intervention before relationships turn lethal. On social media, the hashtag Justice for Phoenix trended as people shared her story, her photos, and their heartbreak. One post read, "She deserved the world. Instead, she got him." For Phoenix's family, the verdict brought no comfort, only finality. Her mother said in a statement outside court, "This is not justice. There is no justice for what was done to Phoenix. But at least the world knows the truth now, and maybe that will stop it from happening to someone else's daughter." Her friends gathered after the sentencing, lighting candles and playing her favorite songs. Some read aloud old texts she had sent them, words of encouragement she had given them when they were struggling. It was heartbreaking, but it was also healing. They were keeping her spirit alive. The trial had laid everything bare, the control, the lies, the 2 days of silence, and finally the truth. Phoenix Spencer Horn had been murdered by the man she trusted most, and now he would spend the rest of his life behind bars for it. But for those who loved her, there was still one question left. How do you live on after losing someone like Phoenix? The courtroom had emptied. The verdict was read. The man who killed Phoenix Spencer Horn was behind bars. But for the people who loved her, there was no sense of victory. There was only the silence she left behind. Phoenix's friends said that after her death, the world felt strangely muted. Nights out felt hollow without her laugh echoing through them. Group chats went quiet, as if everyone was afraid to be the first to speak. The little things that used to make them smile now made them cry. Songs she loved, streets they used to walk, inside jokes that no longer had their punchline. Her mother described waking up every day and, for one fleeting second, forgetting what had happened, then remembering, and feeling her world collapse all over again. Her father said the house felt like a museum of her, frozen in time, full of her things but empty of her. He would walk past her bedroom and half expect to hear music playing, see her sprawled on the bed, grinning at her phone. But the room stayed silent, and it would stay that way forever. As word of her murder spread, tributes poured in from across Scotland. Local cafes put photos of Phoenix in their windows, surrounded by flowers. Candlelit vigils were held in the town square. People who had never even met her stood side by side in the cold, holding candles and crying quietly. Friends posted their memories online. Videos of her laughing until she cried, screenshots of supportive messages she had sent them late at night, selfies where her eyes sparkled. One friend wrote, "She made everyone feel like they mattered. Now nothing feels like it does." Grace McCabe, who had publicly called Phoenix one of her biggest emotional supports during her rise to becoming a Miss Scotland finalist, shared a long tribute. She said Phoenix had consistently reached out, was my friend and supported me through the hardest time. I wish she got all of the happiness and success I knew was out there for her. Her words captured the grief of an entire community. Phoenix had given her heart to the world, and the world had failed to protect her. In the weeks after the trial, something began to shift. Phoenix's friends and family, though shattered, refused to let her be remembered only as a victim. They wanted the world to know who she truly was: kind, bold, hilarious, stubborn, loyal. They began organizing fundraisers for domestic violence charities in her name. They spoke at schools and youth groups about coercive control, teaching young people how to spot red flags before they escalate into danger. They printed posters with her smile on them alongside the words, "If it feels like love, but it hurts, tell someone." Her name became not just a reminder of what had been lost, but a call to protect others from the same fate. Phoenix's murder reignited a national conversation about domestic violence in the UK. Advocates pointed out that a woman is killed by a current or former partner every 3 days in the UK. Many of these deaths follow a pattern just like Phoenix's: control, isolation, jealousy, emotional manipulation, then finally violence. Experts warned that society often misunderstands abuse, expecting it to be obvious or physical from the start. In reality, it usually begins subtly, like Phoenix's did. Checking messages, demanding attention, sowing fear disguised as love. Campaigners pushed for new laws to make coercive control more widely recognized and prosecuted before it turns lethal. They called for better education in schools about healthy relationships, consent, and warning signs. And they urged friends and families to listen to their instincts, to speak up when something feels wrong, even if they fear being intrusive. Phoenix's name became central to this movement. Her death, though unspeakably tragic, was sparking efforts to save others. Those who loved Phoenix are determined that she be remembered for her life, not her death. They talk about the way she laughed until she couldn't breathe, how she sang along terribly to songs she loved, how she always carried snacks in her bag, just in case someone got hungry. They talk about how she noticed when people were hurting, even when they tried to hide it, and how she always knew exactly what to say. They talk about her stubborn streak, how she'd argue passionately for what she believed in, but would also be the first to forgive. To her friends, she wasn't just kind. She was fierce. Fierce about loyalty, about justice, about lifting people up. One friend said, "She had this way of making you believe you could survive anything. Even now, I try to remember what she'd say to me, that I'm strong enough, that I'll get through it." They call her Fee still, like she's just out of sight, about to walk back into the room at any moment. And in their hearts, she never really left. Even after the trial, questions lingered. Could anyone have stopped this? Were there signs they missed? Could Phoenix have been saved? Her loved ones know those questions will haunt them forever. They also know that blame lies only with the man who chose to kill her. But still, they replay every memory, every message, every moment she seemed off, wishing they could go back, grab her hand, and pull her away before it was too late. It's a torment that families of domestic violence victims know all too well, the unbearable thought that love itself became the weapon that destroyed them. Today, Phoenix's name lives on in memorial pages, charity events, and whispered stories among friends who still feel her absence like a missing limb. Her mother keeps her room exactly as it was. Her friends wear bracelets engraved with her initials. Grace keeps photos of her on her vanity, so she sees Phoenix's smile every morning before she faces the world. They say it gives them courage, the kind Phoenix gave to everyone else. Her story has already saved lives. Teachers have reported students coming forward to talk about controlling partners after hearing about Phoenix. Friends have intervened when they saw patterns they once would have ignored. That's her legacy, turning heartbreak into hope. Phoenix Spencer Horn should have had decades ahead of her. To travel, to dance, to fall in love again with someone who deserved her, to grow old surrounded by children and laughter and light. Instead, she became another name in the devastating roll call of women murdered by the men they loved. Another life stolen, another warning too late. But Phoenix was more than her death. She was fire and kindness and resilience. And by telling her story, honestly and with love, we ensure she will not be forgotten. If you or someone you know is experiencing domestic abuse, you are not alone. UK National Domestic Abuse Helpline 0808 2000 247. US National Domestic Violence Hotline 1-800-799-SAFE-7233. Text Loviest to 22522. Please reach out. Please tell someone. Don't wait for it to get worse, because love should never hurt. Phoenix Spencer Horn lit up every room she walked into. And though her light was taken from this world far too soon, it still shines. Thank you for watching and for honoring Phoenix's story with me today. Stories like hers deserve to be heard, not forgotten. If this video moved you, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel, like the video, and share it with others because spreading awareness can save lives. Your support helps us keep telling these important stories. Stay safe, and I'll see you in the next one.